I need to start this like a confession. If you've ever sat across from someone who controls your paycheck, your health insurance, and maybe even the next year of your life, you'll know the taste I had in my mouth that day. Bitter, metallic, like I'd been chewing on a coin. That was the taste when my phone buzzed with a text that read, "Get up and leave. Don't say anything to your boss." That's it. No name, no context. Just those words on my screen while my manager sat across from me, smiling the kind of smile you rehearse in the mirror before a firing. I froze. My brain started running triage. Do I pretend I didn't see it? Do I read it out loud as a joke? Do I quietly lock my phone and hope no one noticed? Meanwhile, he kept talking, pointing at some charts on a slide deck that I knew weren't right. He said words like compliance gaps and audit risks, phrases that make HR twitchy and lawyers sharp. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could feel my pulse in it. Another vibration. Second message. Now. You'd think walking out of a conference room would be simple. Just push your chair back and stand. But when you're mid-performance review, with your manager watching you like a hawk, every inch of motion feels like a betrayal. My chair squeaked louder than it ever had in its entire life. He looked up, eyebrows raised. "I need a moment," I said, voice tight. I didn't give him time to ask what kind of moment. I stood, grabbed my phone, and walked. My legs felt like stilts. Awkward and wrong, but somehow I kept moving. Past the projector hum, past the empty coffee cups on the credenza, past the receptionist who blinked twice like she'd seen a ghost. Elevator doors closed behind me with a metallic sigh. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like an hour. My phone buzzed again before the doors even opened. "Leave the building, east exit. Don't use your badge." That last part sent a shiver down my spine. Don't use my badge. Why? Was it already deactivated? Or worse, flagged? The lobby stretched in front of me like a stage. Security guards by the turnstiles, badges flashing, people scanning in and out without a thought. I forced my face into neutral, like I was just another mid-level drone going for a smoke break. East exit, side door. Push bar instead of scanner. My heart hammered as I reached for it. Cool air slapped me in the face outside. The city noises felt sharper than usual. Bus brakes screeching, heels clacking on concrete. Some guy yelling into a headset. I half expected someone to grab my shoulder, drag me back inside. Nobody did. Another buzz. "Keep walking. Call me in 2 minutes. Don't go back." That was the moment the world tilted. I'd been worried about a bad review, maybe a written warning. Now it felt like I'd just dodged a firing squad without even knowing who was aiming the rifles. I ducked into the first place with an awning, a corner cafe that smelled like burnt espresso and sugar syrup. Ordered nothing, just stood by the pastry case pretending to study croissants, while my hand shook over the call button. When the line clicked, the voice wasn't who I expected. It wasn't IT, not HR, not even a colleague. Calm, steady, almost surgical. Thank you for leaving. Listen carefully." I pressed the phone harder against my ear as if that would anchor me to reality. The man on the other end spoke like he already knew everything about me. My role, my projects, even the fact that I was scheduled for that meeting at 10:30 sharp. "Your manager is trying to stage you for a compliance breach," he said. "We need you out of the building so chain of custody is clean. Do not log in. Do not touch your work laptop. Do not badge in again." I wanted to argue, demand proof, demand his name, anything, but my throat locked. Somewhere inside, a colder voice whispered that the text saved me from walking into a trap I hadn't even seen. Behind me, the cafe door opened. My manager walked past the window, phone to his ear, looking agitated. He didn't see me, not yet. I sank lower behind the pastry case, heart slamming, the phone still pressed against my ear. The voice continued, calm as ever. "From now on, everything you do matters. So listen, and don't go back upstairs." When people ask me later why I didn't see it coming, I always laugh, because I did. Just not the way you think. It didn't happen all at once, like a trapdoor opening beneath me. It was a slow tilt of the floor, a gradual rewiring of reality, until I wasn't sure if I was paranoid or if someone really was moving the walls. It started with the efficiency program. That was the manager's big idea. Streamline everything, cut the so-called fat, prove to the higher-ups that our department could do more with less. On paper, it sounded smart. In practice, it meant removing safeguards, skipping double checks, pushing volume over accuracy. At first, it was small. He accidentally removed my name from a changelog on a client project. He said it was a formatting glitch. Then 2 client training sessions disappeared from my calendar. I asked him about it. He shrugged and said I must not have saved the invites. A week later, my access to the approval system mysteriously downgraded. It told me the request came from management. It's amazing how quickly you can be made to doubt yourself. You start thinking, maybe I did miss the invite. Maybe I forgot to CC someone. Maybe I'm the problem. But then came the meeting with the Johnson account, a $1 million client. I'd built the entire process that caught errors in their filings before they went live. Mid-call, the manager cut me off. He said, "We don't need to get into the weeds. The system is fine." Except it wasn't. He'd skipped the double review I insisted on, and sure enough, a mistake slipped through. When the client called back furious, he blamed me. He even used my exact phrasing, overcomplicating with unnecessary checks. That was the moment the doubt crystallized into anger. I started writing things down. Every error, every access change, every missing invite. I bought a simple black notebook, nothing fancy, and wrote dates, times, screenshots printed and stapled inside. Call it paranoia, call it over-preparation, but I've always believed in receipts. And because I knew even paper could disappear, I mirrored my work archive. Not company files, not IP, just email threads with my own approvals, my own notes, all stored on a compliance-approved backup service. Totally within policy. It was my insurance, and I prayed I'd never need it. But the manager wasn't stupid. He didn't just sabotage projects. He chipped away at me personally. A joke in front of the team about me being detail-obsessed. A comment in a group chat about how I love to slow things down. A subtle eye roll whenever I suggested following protocol. One by one, people began looking at me not as the fixer, but as the bottleneck. And yet, some noticed. A senior client rep pulled me aside after a review call. "You're the only reason this place doesn't burn down," she whispered. A new hire in our department quietly asked me for old process docs, because the new efficiency version was impossible to follow. I kept a mental list of these moments. Not allies exactly, but reminders that I wasn't crazy. The real kicker came 2 weeks before that meeting. I walked into the office and found him already at my desk, tapping on my laptop. He smiled when I froze. "Just checking something. Don't worry." He closed the lid like it was nothing. It later told me there'd been a remote update, but couldn't explain why my access logs showed local keystrokes while I was in transit. That night, I wrote in my notebook in block letters, "He is building a case." Still, I told no one. That's what makes this kind of sabotage effective, the silence it breeds. You don't want to sound paranoid. You don't want to be the squeaky wheel. And maybe, deep down, I wanted to believe he'd stop short of outright betrayal. Until the day of the performance meeting. The day he smiled across from me with slides already loaded, already worded to sound like I'd been careless, reckless, even dangerous to the company. That was the day my phone buzzed. That was the day someone else, someone I didn't even know, confirmed that I wasn't paranoid at all. I stood in that cafe staring at rows of croissants I couldn't afford to taste, my heart pounding so hard the glass case rattled when I leaned on it. The voice on the phone was steady, deliberate, like someone who'd spent years practicing how not to scare people when delivering bad news. "You need to understand," he said, "your manager isn't just difficult. He's trying to bury you. Today's meeting was designed to pin a compliance breach on you. HR was about to discover documents on your laptop that would make it stick. I gripped the edge of the counter. Wait, documents? What are you talking about? I don't keep... That's the point, he cut in. You don't. But he does. He's been planting files, using his access, building a chain of errors that leads back to your account. We've been tracing the edits for weeks. If you'd stayed in that room, he would have pulled the trigger. The words sank into me like cold water. Planting files. My mind flashed to the morning I caught him at my desk. The update IT couldn't explain. The way slides in today's meeting had been too polished, too ready, like a script rehearsed long before I walked in. Who are you? My voice cracked. Why should I even believe you? I'm with internal investigations, he said, and the way he said it made the hairs on my neck rise. No badge number, no department name, but the confidence was absolute. We don't usually intervene this way, but the case has reached a point where your safety, your clean exit, matters more than protocol. If you had stayed, the evidence would be contaminated. Now it's not. I sank into a corner booth, phone pressed so tight to my ear it hurt. People bustled around me, a mother shushing a toddler, a barista calling out lattes, and none of them knew my entire career was being dissected in real time. You said clean exit, I whispered. What does that even mean? It means don't go back inside, don't badge in, don't touch your laptop. We've already locked it for forensic review. You need to walk away. Right now you're a witness, not a suspect. But that can flip fast if you give him another opening. My hands shook so badly I shoved them under the table. So what? I just leave? Pretend I don't exist? For now, yes, he said. Then after a pause, unless you'd like to fight back. But that's your choice. We can shield you legally. The rest is up to you. It hit me then. I wasn't just escaping a setup. I was standing at the edge of something bigger. The manager wasn't acting alone. Someone higher up had signed off on those efficiency changes, on skipping safeguards, on moving faster than the rules allowed. And if he was desperate enough to frame me, it meant someone had started asking questions he couldn't answer. The investigator's voice softened, almost kind. You've been documenting, haven't you? I swallowed. How do you know that? Because the patterns match. The timestamps. The way anomalies show up in two places. Once clean, once doctored. Whoever's been keeping parallel records, that's the only reason we caught it. We need you. But we also need you untouched by his trap. The air in my chest loosened, just a little. For weeks I'd felt like I was losing my mind, scribbling in that black notebook, printing screenshots, backing up files no one else cared about. And here was someone telling me it wasn't paranoia. It was evidence. But even then, the voice gave me no illusions. Understand this, he said. If you go back, if you confront him, you'll look like a rogue employee covering tracks. That's exactly what he wants. Your only move now is silence. Silence, my greatest weakness and my only weapon. Through the cafe window, I saw my manager again, pacing the sidewalk with his phone to his ear. He looked agitated, scanning the street as if hunting. I ducked lower, pulse hammering. That night I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch in my apartment with the lights off, phone face down, staring at the ceiling fan turning shadows across the room. Every vibration from my phone felt like an electric shock. Was it him calling? HR? The investigator again? I didn't check. Not yet. At 3:07 a.m., I sat up and made a decision. If he wanted to build a case, then I'd build one too. Only mine wouldn't collapse in the sunlight. First step was inventory. Not of furniture or clothes, but of boundaries. What was mine? What was theirs? My work laptop belonged to the company. Fine, keep it. My emails, client accounts, project files, all property of the firm. Fine. But my handwritten notes? My mirrored archive of my approvals? My LinkedIn profile, my professional phone, my personal relationships? Those were mine. And if I walked out clean, I'd make damn sure he never twisted them into something else. I opened that black notebook on my kitchen table. Date after date, page after page of tiny, cramped handwriting. Client training mysteriously canceled. Access changed. IT said request came from MGMT. Johnson account. Double check skipped. In the margin, I circled one line 3 times. He is building a case. Well, so was I. Next came the letter. I drafted it slowly, stripping out every trace of emotion until it was nothing but steel. 3 sentences, each weighed like gold. Effective immediately, I resigned from my position. This decision is based on a hostile work environment and irregular access to my account, which I am prepared to document. Please direct all further communication through legal. No accusations, no insults, no tears. Just a paper shield strong enough to stand in court if needed. By sunrise, I had 2 more things set up. A 1-page website, nothing fancy, just my name, consulting services, and a compliance-first tagline. And a new business phone number that rang on a device no one at the company had ever touched. I didn't blast it out, didn't cold message clients. That would have been reckless. Instead, I did something quieter. Updated my LinkedIn headline to Independent Consultant. No celebration, no confetti emojis. Just the fact of it, visible enough for those who were already watching. The silence after that was its own kind of torture. Every instinct screamed at me to warn people, to call colleagues, to spill what I knew. But I remembered the investigator's words. Every word is bait. Silence was survival. Still, I didn't just sit idle. I studied. Not case law or compliance policies, I already knew those. I studied the rhythm of my manager. When he sent emails, late, frantic. When he liked to corner people in hallways, right before big meetings. When he tried to plant doubt with jokes that weren't jokes. I wrote it all down, not as evidence, but as understanding. If he was predictable, I could be prepared. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. His voice came through tight and angry. "We need to talk. You walking out like that looked bad. Call me back, immediately." I didn't. Instead, I scanned and timestamped my resignation letter, saved it to a flash drive, and scheduled a courier to deliver a physical copy to HR. No digital traces he could tamper with. No emails he could accidentally delete. Just ink on paper, signed and dated. By the time the investigator called again, my exit wasn't just a possibility. It was already engineered. "You're ahead of schedule," he said, a hint of approval in his voice. Most people panic. They flail. You've already drawn the line. "I'm not giving him another opening," I said, surprising myself with the calm in my own voice. "Good," he replied. "Then you'll be ready for what comes next." I didn't ask what he meant, because deep down I already knew. I wasn't just walking away. I was building the foundation for something else. Something that, if I played it right, would be stronger than anything he could ever destroy. The all hands was supposed to be a victory lap. That's how my manager framed it in the invite, celebrating efficiency improvements and future goals. Translation, he'd get to parade the numbers he'd cooked and position himself as the visionary who'd wrung miracles out of a tired department. The auditorium buzzed with nervous energy. People were tired, worn thin by the efficiency program, but everyone knew optics mattered more than oxygen. Screens glowed with slide decks, coffee cups steamed, and the company logo pulsed at the front like a neon heartbeat. I took a seat in the back, my resignation letter folded flat in a manila envelope inside my bag. My palms sweated against the paper like it could burn me if I hesitated. Then he walked on stage. Same polished grin, same too-perfect suit, same rehearsed confidence. He clicked to the first slide, charts climbing, costs dropping. "This is what leadership looks like," he said, pacing like a man auditioning for a TED Talk. And then he did it. He mentioned me by name, not with praise, not with thanks, with a smirk. "Some people," he said, "wanted to slow us down with unnecessary checks and redundant safeguards. They couldn't see the bigger picture, but we kept pushing forward, and look at the results. The room laughed politely, the way people laugh when the boss signals it's safe. That was my cue. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor loud enough to turn heads. My heart pounded so hard I thought the mic would pick it up. Step by step, I walked down the aisle. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady, like I was late for a train I knew would wait. He noticed halfway through. His smile faltered for a flicker. At the front table, I handed the envelope to HR. No words, just the transfer of weight from my hand to hers. Her eyes widened when she saw the seal. I turned, faced the room, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. "This is my last day," I said. 3 words. No theatrics, no rant, just fact. Then I walked out. Silence followed me like a second shadow. Even the mic feedback seemed to choke before cutting out. I didn't look back. Outside, the sun hit me square in the face. It felt like stepping out of a courtroom, like a verdict had been read and the sentence was freedom. That night, my phone rang. Not from the manager, not from HR, from a client, a legacy account I'd nursed for years. "We heard you left," the rep said. "Please tell me you're still doing consulting. Because if you are, we'd like to talk." I almost laughed. The website I'd put up was barely more than a digital business card, but it was enough. The next morning, another call, a smaller vendor this time. They'd caught wind through the grapevine. "Can we retain you? Just a few hours will pay your rate." I kept my voice calm, professional, but inside I was shaking. It wasn't about revenge, not yet. It was about survival. And survival was happening faster than I expected. Meanwhile, word from inside trickled out. The efficiency program was wobbling. Without me quietly plugging the leaks, the errors multiplied. Deadlines slipped. Clients complained. The slide deck glow dimmed fast. I updated my notebook one last time. This entry wasn't about sabotage or access logs. It was about momentum, mine, not his. For the first time, I felt the balance shift. He had tried to script my downfall in a conference room. Instead, I had written my exit in real time, in front of the whole company. And now, without lifting a finger, the cracks in his empire were starting to show. Inside the company, the silence I left behind didn't last long. It shattered within a week. First came the compliance freeze. My manager's access to approvals was temporarily suspended for review. That's corporate speak, for we don't trust you, but we're not ready to say it out loud yet. He brushed it off as a technical glitch in front of his team. But I knew better. People told me later that his hands trembled when he tried to log into the system and got an error message. Then finance flagged anomalies. The very savings he'd bragged about in that all hands started looking less like innovation and more like cooked numbers. Cost reductions didn't match vendor invoices. Timelines didn't match payroll. Money had moved in ways that weren't supposed to happen. And then legal stepped in. They reopened 2 closed incidents I had quietly documented in my notebook months earlier. The missing training sessions, the skipped double reviews. I hadn't filed them formally, but my notes matched internal timestamps. Someone had slipped those pages across the right desk. While all of this stormed through the office, I was on the other side of town onboarding my second client. It felt surreal. One world unraveling, another quietly building itself around me. I sat at a cafe with a laptop that was mine, not theirs, writing a proposal under my new header, Independent Consulting Services. No drama, no panic, just structure. But in his world, panic was the only currency left. Emails turned frantic. Slack messages grew sharper, shorter, typed at midnight. Screenshots floated to me through back channels. Him lashing out in all caps, demanding loyalty, threatening performance consequences if people didn't work harder. And then came the board. A subcommittee convened to review operational integrity. That phrase sent chills down the hallways. Everyone knew it wasn't just about numbers anymore. It was about him. I didn't hear this from gossip. I heard it from the investigator who called me late one night. His voice was calm as always, but there was a note of finality now. Your notes matched the timestamps, he said. That's what triggered the escalation. Without your parallel records, this could have been swept under the rug. With them, it's unavoidable. I sat there staring at my black notebook, the one I'd filled with cramped handwriting when I thought I was losing my mind. It looked so small, so ordinary, yet it had become a lever big enough to move the entire company. Meanwhile, clients began to hesitate. Contracts stalled. Renewals slowed. People didn't want to commit money to a system they suspected was rotting. And the irony? Some of them called me. Not because I marketed myself, not because I poached them, but because I was the only one who had treated their problems like they mattered. I built my calendar carefully. Limited slots, clear scopes, strict compliance with non-solicitation rules. I didn't have to bend the law. I just had to be visible when they came looking. The contrast couldn't have been starker. Him, unraveling in midnight emails, locked out of systems, fighting rumors he couldn't control. Me, writing contracts in daylight, invoices paid net 15, no secrets, no traps. And yet, I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because storms don't end just because you've found shelter. Sometimes they circle back, harder than before. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the skyline, my phone buzzed with a message from the investigator. Just 6 words. Board meeting scheduled. He won't walk out. I closed my notebook, slid it into a drawer, and sat in silence. The storm wasn't over. It was about to peak. Board meetings were usually closed-door affairs. Whispers carried down hallways by people who swore they hadn't heard anything, but this one bled into the open like a wound. It started with an email blast. Operational Integrity Review Session. Attendance mandatory for senior staff. That phrase alone sent shockwaves through the office. Integrity review meant someone's head was on the block. The manager strutted in like he owned the place, clutching a stack of papers thick enough to look impressive but thin enough to avoid scrutiny. People later told me he was grinning, but it was brittle, like glass about to crack. He opened with charm. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I want to clarify some misunderstandings regarding our efficiency program. He framed himself as the victim of overzealous auditors, of isolated bad apples who had misapplied his visionary strategies. He leaned on buzzwords, gestured at charts, sprinkled in just enough humility to look reasonable. And then the exhibits began. The compliance lead projected metadata logs onto the screen. Approvals altered from his account, timestamps that lined up perfectly with the anomalies. Every change traced back to his login, not mine. Every missing safeguard had his fingerprints. He tried to argue. Those could have been fabricated. Legal cut him off. Chain of custody is intact. These records were pulled directly from system backups, and we have corroborating notes. That's when they dropped my notebook pages. Scanned, time-stamped, stapled into binders with my cramped handwriting preserved in ink. Parallel records matching their forensic data, line for line. For the first time, his voice cracked. Those notes, she's unstable. You can't take those seriously. But the board wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at the evidence, the patterns, the undeniable trail. A junior staffer, someone he'd berated for months, raised their hand timidly. He told me to delete backups, they said. I saved copies because it felt wrong. Their voice trembled, but their words landed like a hammer. The air in the room shifted. The predator had become the cornered animal. By the time the vote was called, the outcome was obvious. Termination for cause. Bonus clawback. Immediate loss of access. HR escorted him out while the board chair announced a policy memo to the entire company. But the pièce de résistance came minutes later. The company's press release hit the wire. We are pleased to announce a new partnership with Independent Consulting Services, founded by my name, to adopt a compliance-first workflow across all departments. My phone buzzed non-stop. Screenshots of the announcement flooded in. Former colleagues, clients, even family members who barely understood what I did for a living, all sending the same message. You won. But it wasn't just about winning. It was about watching the trap spring shut, not on me, but on him. And the most delicious twist? As part of his severance terms, the only piece he could cling to after losing everything else, he was required to complete the training modules designed by my firm. Every click, every quiz, every acknowledgement of the protocols he had mocked would come from my hand. Corporate karma doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in PDFs and policy slides, dry as dust but sharp as knives. As he signed his severance papers under the watchful eyes of legal, he wasn't the architect of efficiency anymore. He was just another line item. And for the first time in months, I finally exhaled. After the press release, my inbox turned into a flood. Former coworkers sent cautious congratulations, the kind where they used emojis instead of words, as if HR might still be watching. Clients wrote longer, almost relieved messages. "We always trusted your judgment. Glad we can work with you directly now." I answered politely, firmly, and never with more than what was needed. Boundaries mattered more than ever. The first week of the partnership was a blur of contracts and kickoff calls. But it was different this time. I wasn't a cog trying to prove my worth inside a machine. I was the architect of my own rules. I set a no 7 p.m. emails policy and put it in writing. My proposals were short, my invoices net 15, and for the first time, I didn't have to ask permission to do the right thing. Meanwhile, inside the company, life went on without him. A new interim manager stepped in, wide-eyed and cautious, and I trained his team with the same clarity I'd always wanted to give. Only now I was being paid market rates for the very work I used to beg to do. And yes, he was still there, in a way. His severance required him to complete my training modules. Every click on a compliance quiz, every acknowledgement of a safeguard he once mocked, ran through a system I built. It wasn't revenge in the Hollywood sense. No shouting, no courtroom theatrics. Just a quiet irony. The man who tried to frame me now had to certify my process to collect his final paycheck. One evening, after a long day of onboarding, I walked past the old building. The windows glowed the same sterile blue. The revolving doors spun the same tired rhythm. The logo still pulsed on the facade. But for the first time, I felt nothing. Not anger, not fear, not even pride. Just distance. In my bag, I carried the same black notebook that had once been my lifeline. Its pages were full, every line cramped with ink, every margin a battlefield. But I didn't need it anymore. The case was closed. The storm had passed. My phone buzzed with a final message from the investigator. "Case closed. Thank you for cooperating." I smiled, slid the notebook into a drawer at home, and punched a hole through my old company badge. I threaded it onto a ribbon and tucked it into the notebook as a bookmark, not a trophy, not a grudge. Just a reminder of the line I'd walked and the choice I'd made to step off it. That night, I shut my laptop at 6 p.m. sharp. No late-night emails, no anxious double checks. I laced up my shoes and went for a walk as the city lights flickered on, one by one. The sweetest revenge wasn't his downfall. It was never needing that building again.